Hi and welcome to Classic ATS. During this 8-part series we're going to show you how to fully build your 911 air-cooled cylinder head.
The cylinder heads used on the 911 motors are an individual cylinder head that is self-contained units. There are a couple of differences on the early cylinder heads. In the 2-liter cylinder heads, the biggest difference is our gasket seating surface, how it seats against our barrel. So with a 2-liter engine, it uses a composite head gasket that is going to seat against this sealing surface on the barrel and up here on the actual cylinder head. The later model engines use a different type of cylinder head sealing method, and you can see on here how the gasket surface is actually recessed into the cylinder head. This is because on the barrel they use a grooved area where a CE or a metal sealing ring with a spring will sit, and then this will seal against the cylinder head. So now that we have our cylinder heads off the motor, the first thing that we want to do before we start disassembling is just to go ahead and run them through the parts washer to clean up some of the surface oil. So all I want to do at this stage is kind of wash out the average amount of oil and kind of degrease the cylinder heads. These are going to go through a lot more extensive cleaning once everything has been disassembled. So now we've had our first quick wash on the cylinder heads. The heads are clean enough to handle. We're going to go ahead and disassemble our valves and springs out of the heads. For that, I'm going to use a C spring compressor. This one is air powered, so I'll connect it to my compressed air, but you can use a mechanical powered one as well. So all I'm going to do first is connect my air line, and I'm going to roll my head onto the side. I'm going to come in and I'm going to hook the top part onto my spring first, and then I'm going to go ahead and compress the spring. With the spring compressed, I'll have the 2 collets, and if I just take a small screwdriver, I can pop them out, and then using a magnet to just pluck them out of the hole. Then I've got my magnet dish right here, which is just going to hold my collar, and then I am just going to release the spring. And I'm not concerned about keeping these in order for right now, so I'm just going to start putting our springs here. We're going to have to wash these further and inspect them. Next, I'm going to go ahead and slide my valve out. Now I'm doing a couple of things when I do that. First thing I'm going to do is grab the valve and I'm going to rock it and see how much play I have. This is going to give me an idea of the condition of the valve guides. We're still going to need to measure them after we've completely disassembled, but this will give me a direction as to whether or not I need to replace them. 911s are typically very hard on the exhaust valve guides, and they will typically wear out in a 2-to-1 ratio. So most cylinder heads I usually figure on having to replace the exhaust guides, if nothing else. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the valve completely for right now. You can keep these in order with the cylinder head, although because we are going to be resurfacing both the valve and the seat, it doesn't really matter if you mix them up for right now. So I'm just going to set that one right there. The next thing that I need to do is I'm going to need to pop off our valve guide seal, and that'll just pop off with a screwdriver. So I'm just going to go ahead and pry it up. These are trash, so there's no reason to keep them. Underneath the spring, we're going to have a series of shims. These shims are going to be used when we set our valve spring installed heights. So for right now, I don't care where they go. I'm just going to be pulling them all out. This way I have them ready to clean up and wash up. So I'm going to do the same to the intake valve now. We want to make sure with the spring compressor that it lines up on the valve, and the same with the top, that it's not going to interfere with any of the studs. There is no difference between the intake and exhaust valve springs or collets and retainers, so it doesn't matter if you mix them up. Same thing, I'm going to push my valve out and I'm going to give it the rock test. This one has about half the amount of movement that the exhaust had, so we can pretty much be sure that the exhaust valve guide is worn out, though the intake doesn't feel too bad. Okay, same thing, I'm just going to pop off my valve stem seal. And remove the shivs. Okay, so that first head is done. I'm just going to put it to side and continue with the rest of it. So this one is particularly worn, and I want to give you an idea of how much movement you can expect to see on a worn valve guide. So on this one, before we even pin fit, we can see it has a lot of lateral movement. Now when you're rocking a valve guide, you always want to rock it back and forth on the same plane that the rocker arm pushes on it. That's because when the rocker arm pushes on the valve surface, it is actually loading and forcing the valve against this side of the valve guide. If we rock the guide from side to side, it's going to have less movement because it doesn't wear as much on that plane. It has more movement, and you can physically see the difference. Now the intake valve is considerably better in the same head, and you can see how much I'm rocking that valve right now, and it has considerably less movement. We'll still need to measure it to make sure it's within usable ranges or how worn it is, but it just gives you an idea of doing a quick check before you even bring any measuring tools in. So now I've got my cylinder heads completely disassembled. It's ready to go back and wash the last remnants of oil out of everything. Then cylinder heads are going to go into the vapor blast machine. So this clean is going to be fairly short and sweet. We've already removed the majority of the oil. What we need to do is we need to clean the remaining oil out from around where the valve spring pockets were. And I'm also going to take my cleaning brush and clean the oil out of the valve guides. This is so I can get an accurate measurement on the valve guide wear. This is basically just to prep the cylinder heads to go into the blast unit. Whether you use a dry blast or a wet blast like us, you don't want to put oil into that environment. At the same time, I'm going to be soaking all of my springs, collets and retainers. So I've got my one pipe here that's just going to be running, and it'll flush through, and then I'll come back and wash those separately. So I've got my 6 cylinder heads that have all been degreased. They're in our vapor blast machine right now. A vapor blast machine is the same as a bead blaster. It just has water added to it, hence the name vapor blasting. It leaves a nicer finish on the cylinder heads, but isn't necessary. So when I'm blasting, I'm going to be cleaning all of the carbon out of our combustion chamber down into our valve pockets and our runners. And then I'm also going to be cleaning all of the fins and external gasket surfaces, so I want to get all of this debris out. I'm going to be cleaning the studs on both ends so we can get a good idea of what condition they are in, both intake, the cam tower, and exhaust studs. cylinder head on the right is how they look when they come out of the blaster. It's kind of a matte finish and is kind of rough to the touch. The cylinder head on the left is what it looks like after it has been through our ceramic polisher. The ceramic polisher helps with final clean. It rinses out the last of the sand and any other debris that we might have missed, and it also seals the pores on the aluminum.